Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking digital marketing, as I am joined by digital marketing expert, Matt Bailey. Matt's training program has been used for big brands and prestigious universities. He has trained brands like Microsoft, Google, and Hilton, and his training program has been used at universities like Duke, Rutgers, and Purdue. So we're going to be talking to him about digital marketing and why his training program is so effective. So Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure, Curtis. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, I have been in digital marketing for, about a little more than 25 years now. Started out building websites in about the mid-90s. And from there, needed to learn, is this working? So I taught myself analytics. Prior to that, I absolutely hated math, but I realized math was much easier when it had dollar signs on it. And that's how I learned analytics from a sales and marketing perspective. Combine that with learning how to build websites, learning how to build accessible websites. And from there, went into the agency world, did a little bit of work with brands, but I loved the agency world of always something different every day, working with different types of clients, different types of business practices, different organizational goals, just learning how different businesses operated. And from there, started my own agency. And after about 10 years of doing that, I realized that I was spending much more time training clients, training employees, and I absolutely love the training side. So that's when I pivoted the business away from client services to do more with direct training with both brands, universities, and other people's employees. So that's been a consistency there.
Well, I know I mentioned it in your intro, but in your own words, just talk about some of the brands and universities that you have worked with and why they chose you to work with them, because I know there's a lot of digital marketers out there.
Yeah, I mean, especially during COVID, I was probably doing about 3 trainings a week with brands, major brands. Prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of work with Microsoft, traveling to all of their worldwide offices and working with their marketers around the world to bring them all up to speed with a consistent vocabulary, consistent definitions, and the Microsoft way of marketing and working with agencies. I would say the feedback that I've always received is that I can take the very complex world of digital marketing and I make it understandable. And I do that not just through lecture, but through activities to help people see how it all works together. And starting from just understanding some basics of keyword research and then how that works with SEO and how it works with paid search and how keywords weave their way through there. And then also in developing content and then marketing that content, keywords still work their way through. And it's a great way of understanding what your audience or what your target audience wants. And so the better you understand the words they use, the needs they express, the better you can work those words into your content for SEO and use them in digital or in search engine advertising. You can also develop that more in your social media because now you know what people want to know and when they want to know it. So there is a holistic view of it. And when you just help people understand how all the parts work together, it just seems to work well.
Well, help us understand how we take data and analytics and turn them into actual action.
That's the big question, Curtis. That's the one I get all the time. And probably my most requested training is about analytics. And it frustrates a lot of people. And the main reason is that there's a couple of things. First, there's an intimidation factor when it comes to analytics. People open up the Google Analytics interface or any analytics interface, and they're immediately overwhelmed by numbers and concepts maybe that they're not familiar with. And so they've got to first work their way through, what do these words mean? What do these concepts mean? And then, are these numbers good or bad? So first of all, it's developing an understanding. And I take people a step back. And that step back is to ask, well, what's your purpose? Why are you in analytics? What question are you trying to answer? And so it starts with your organization and the objectives that you have. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And then you, as a marketer or a business owner, now that you've defined your purpose, what your priority is, now let's decide, well, what measurements are going to help you understand that? What measurements are going to help you understand where you are and where you need to improve? So right away, what we're doing is we're taking away the hundreds of numbers that you see in an analytics report, and we're going to focus on 4 or 5 that are the most critical to your objective. And then depending upon what kind of business you are, whether you're a B2B and you're focused on lead generation, or if you're in e-commerce, or if you're you're a publisher and you're trying to get more page views, every single one of them has different objectives that they're trying to accomplish. And so not one analytics program, not one analytics report is going to work for everybody. But when you define, here's what I need in order to grow my business, here's the data that I need, then we start exploring those 4 or 5 things. And then from there, it's then understanding from the numbers that we're looking at. And now we're going to take that funnel view and work backwards to, okay, how many visitors did you get? How many visitors clicked on what you wanted them to click? And what page did they go to? And how did they react to that? And at every level of visitors coming through your site or coming through a campaign, what we're going to do then is look at, well, what are all the influential factors? That if someone looks at a page and behaves in a certain way, what are the influential factors that will cause them to do that? Same thing in a paid ad. If you write it a certain way, people will click on it. And so based on those measurements, we come up with 4 primary things that we can change to affect that behavior. And so it's understanding, when we look at a number, we don't just look at it as a number of how many people did something. We can compare it to what's expected, and then we can have 4 things that we can change, 4 influencing factors that if I want to increase that number, if I want to decrease that number, here are the actions that I can take to do that. And so as you develop that funnel of measurement, you're not only developing your comparatives of this is what I expect, but also the levers you have to pull or manipulate in order to increase, decrease. And so we're not just looking at it from terms of numbers, we're looking at it in terms of behavior. And when I understand this number means this, and here's how I can change that. And I change that by changing words, changing pictures, changing the content of an ad in order to get more people to do what I want them to do. So we're approaching analytics more from a behavioral standpoint of if this, then that. And then you watch to make sure that that's exactly what happened. Most marketers have never been taught how to do analytics. And I think that might be the advantage of me being self-taught on it, because I was trying to answer questions. And when you have a specific question that you're trying to answer, it makes it a lot easier to focus on that data and what you can do to improve it.
So let's talk about how a business can effectively use social media without wasting lots of time and money.
That's a great question. I get that all the time. Well, it really comes down to, again, what's your objective? What are you trying to accomplish? And now, how are we trying to accomplish this through social media? And what are going to be the right measurements that show that you are accomplishing what you want to accomplish? And so we kind of look at it from the funnel standpoint that number one, are people seeing your content? And is it, and then we can even go back further. Is it the right channel? Are you using the channel properly? Are you using the right media? Is your audience that you're trying to reach even here? So there are some strategic things to answer at the very beginning. But then as we start going through and measuring how your audience are, how are you working with them? I want to know, number one, are people even seeing the content? Because if they're not seeing it, if you're not getting impressions, well, that means that the content you're uploading is not really fitting the algorithm. And that could get to the lack of posting that you're making, the lack of content, the lack of regularity. If you're not getting impressions, and that means your content isn't really working in the algorithm and you're not getting exposure to the audience that you want. So that's the first measurement that tells us what we need to do. Then we start looking at, all the activities that people can do. We can look at likes, we can look at comments, and we can look at shares. And each one of those has a different level of value. I like to equate it that likes are the attention getters. If my content is being liked, or we call that an approval rate, how many people are liking or approving it based on how many impressions there were. And from that, I know that I got someone's attention. So to me, the like is nothing more than an attention metric. It means that they stopped for a few seconds and they liked something. And it was typically the visual. And so I'm looking at what the thumbnail looks like. What does the image look like? What are the words that are in there? And so if I'm not getting as many likes as I would normally get, I look at the image because that's the first thing people look at, gets their attention, and they like it. When people share the content, that means it impressed them to a point that they felt compelled to spread the word. That is a highly valuable metric. It's a valuable behavioral metric because it's feedback that people love your content and they want to share it with somebody else. And so I like that as almost like a loyalty metric because people are sharing it across. Commenting is, again, depending upon the media or the channel, all these can mean a little bit different because when then people are commenting, it means that now they're participating. There's something there that they felt compelled. And to me, if someone is typing something, that is a great behavioral metric. It shows that you've engaged them. It shows that you've created content that has made them think. And so those are, instead of just looking at these as just raw numbers, they mean something. And then ultimately, the like, the share, the comment, those are great, but none of those mean as much as getting someone to click and go somewhere. If I'm trying to use social media to drive people to my website, and then from there, I want them to subscribe. I want them to buy. I want them to fill out a form. I want them to watch something. You see, now I'm driving them from a social media channel to my site. And when they do something like subscribe, like fill out a form, now all of a sudden they become my audience. And now I can send them an email whenever I want, and I know they'll get it. Because right now, if I'm posting content on social media, less than 3% of my audience will see my content because that's the way social media runs. If I want more people to see my content, I have to pay to get more people to see my content. So ultimately, what I'm trying to do is use social media to build my mailing list, use it to build my customer list, use it to build my lead list. And so that click-through rate, getting that click from someone from social media to my site to where now I can get them to become my customer or my subscriber, that is a true measurement of your ability to leverage social media and use it to create your own audience. And so that type of behavior, when I'm measuring that, that shows my persuasiveness of drawing people from social media to my content, and then measuring how how many of them then will become direct audience followers of me. That's how I use social media for a business, is not just the participation, but ultimately, what do you want people to do? And are they doing it?
So give some other best practice tips of for businesses how they can market online.
Well, one of the things I absolutely love, like I said, is building my own audience. I use social media to build my mailing list. And your mailing list, when you send that out, that's going to go to 90% or more of your audience. And then from there, right now, content management systems or customer relationship management, CRM systems, if you're doing email through there, it's so easy to see who's consistently opening your emails, who's buying products. And so from there, you can segment your lists into the most active, or the people that buy the most, or the people that click through to see your content the most. And you can engage all your customers at different levels when you want. And so when you send emails, people get them. That's one way, absolutely, is just driving that business. The other way is also looking at the different channels and how they perform. Great way of understanding this is, how much am I paying? If I'm marketing to show up in Google, if I'm marketing to social media, if I'm marketing with ads or with search ads, I'm putting time and money in various degrees in each of these. And so I always tell people, you need to measure the amount of hours and look at what is it worth to you to put these hours in. Also look at monetarily, what are you investing in each of these channels? Then you need to measure what the result is. How many people are coming from search and becoming customers, and how much does it cost to get that customer? Same thing. How many people are coming from social media? What does it cost? And then I even break it down in different social media channels. What does it cost for me to get someone from YouTube to my website to become a customer or a lead, or from Instagram or from Facebook? Looking at all of these differently, because people use these channels differently. They think differently. Someone who's on Instagram is thinking completely differently than someone who goes to Google and types in a problem that they have and they're looking for a solution. And so understanding that every single channel, people are thinking differently, they behave differently. And when we understand that, then we can start looking at the time and money we're putting into each of these, and we can build a comparison of how much time and money I'm investing in one channel, and am I getting the return out of that? And so that is, not just in terms of analytics, but in terms of just great business practice, is to understand where you're focusing your time and effort and what you're getting out of that. Because every hour you put into marketing, man, it's got to be worth something, because it's taking you away from actually running the business if you're a business owner.
Well, talk about how much Google really knows about a person.
Google knows more than your spouse, your best friend, your family members. There's a book, I highly recommend it to anyone in marketing, or even if you just want a good view of technology and human behavior. It's called Everybody Lies. And it was written by a couple of researchers who were curious as to know, why do people lie on surveys? Why do they lie to pollsters? Why do they lie to anyone that asks their opinion, whether it's online or in person? And what they realized is, people, they don't always want their opinion to be known, and they don't want to be judged by that. But the one place everyone is honest is in the search box at Google. And so you can actually go in your Google account. So for example, it's ads settings. ads.google.com. And Curtis, I can send you the URLs for these. And in your ads settings, it will show you based on your behavior, based on YouTube content that you've watched, based on shopping that you do online, you can see how Google has segmented you based on your interests. And you can see all the interests that Google has for you. And what that means is advertisers who come to Google looking for audiences who have this interest, that's how Google connects you. You can also look at your history on Google, and day by day, you can see what Google records about you and your activity. Every single search that you've made, every single map request, directions, every single search on maps, every single search and view on YouTube, ads that you've seen. And if you're using an Android phone, oh my goodness, every single contact that you've texted, every single song that you've listened to, all of this is being recorded in Google, and you can go and see it in your account settings.
Now, can you delete it?
You can. So it's a little different. If you're in the EU, you can request that. You can download everything that Google has. You have a legal right to download everything that Google has on you, and you can request that it be deleted. In the US, we cannot. We can tell it to stop. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is deleted. So it really depends on where you live and what the privacy laws are. But right now, the EUs are probably the strictest. And so Google is trying to play that game of appeasing the EU, but also the California privacy code that went into effect a couple of years ago gives you much more consumer rights about the data that's being collected on you. Right now, that's probably the biggest issue in online privacy and data is just the sheer amount of data that's being collected on you, not just by Google, but just about any app you use, any social media you use is collecting data on you and trying to track your behavior all over online.
If I receive some advice on how to get the best Google rankings, how do I know if that advice is correct or accurate or not?
Wow. Well, I will admit the SEO world has been compared to some snake oil. That there are a lot of people who will say just about anything. Here it is. I mean, here's the basics. The basics is know the words that your audience is searching for and understand the solution that they're trying or the problem that they're trying to solve. And when you understand those words of how people search for the problem that they have and what kind of solution they're looking for, you integrate those words into your website, into the page title, into the headings, into the content. And you don't just repeat a word. What we're looking for is the context. If I understand the problem that you're trying to solve, well, then I'm going to write about that problem. I'm going to show you examples of how other people have solved it. And I'm going to use language very naturally. I'm going to use synonyms. I'm going to use metaphors. I'm going to use these tools that our language gives us to explain why this product is going to be the best product to solve your problem. And so simply integrating those words into your content is probably the best thing you can do. And many companies, just after doing that, have seen remarkable changes in their rankings. Now, the other side of this is the websites that link to you, because you can put all the content on your site, and that's one of the main ways. The second main way is through, now you've got to establish credibility. And that credibility is established by who is linking to you, who is citing you as a resource or citing your expertise, who is linking to you and recommending you as a solution. And so that's one of the ways that Google really distinguished itself in the early days is they utilized this algorithm that wasn't just judging the words you had on the page, but it was also judging, are there other important websites linking to you? And then who links to them? And so they would assign a level of importance to different websites. And if you have high level important websites linking to you, well, that makes you an important website. And so that takes now a level of PR. And so writing articles, getting them posted on other websites, writing news articles and getting them picked up in news sites, getting industry magazines or industry news sources to write about you and link to you. It's all PR now. And the more PR you generate that drives links back to your site, that will help you gain rankings. So those are the two primary ways that you gain rankings for your website in Google.
Well, let's talk about how you find a trustworthy digital marketer.
Wow. I tell people there's a couple things. Number one, someone who listens to you. Don't just fall for, when someone says we have a system or we have anyone who claims to have a proprietary system for getting rankings or a secret knowledge or anything like that, run away. There is nothing secret about it. There's nothing proprietary. It just takes some work. What I recommend is someone who will listen to you, who they want to know, how does your business run? What are the distinguishing factors of your business? What makes it run? How do you make money? I want to talk to an agency or I want to talk to a digital marketer who wants to understand my business and what the priority is. And also understand more about what's my angle, because I may have 10 different competitors, but we all might sell a little differently. We all might have a different approach. That's what I'm looking at, is someone who is going to learn about my business, learn our personality, learn about how we position ourselves in the market, and then work with us to do that. The second thing is, any company that just sends you a report that is just 50 slides with graphs and charts and data tables, and gives you no insight as to what happened, why it happened, and what you can do to improve. That, I think, is probably, it's one of the laziest things that has happened, in this digital marketing world, is these agencies just, and by the way, and even if you ask them, how's a campaign going? They go into full protection mode. They generate 100-slide deck full of charts, graphs, data tables, but they don't explain anything. And so it gets right back to, here's what we expected. Here's the performance. Here's how we can change it. And here's what we're going to need to do that. And so it's understanding that you're a partner with the agency, and they need to be I would ask right up front, show me the reports that you provide other customers, other clients. Show me those reports and explain to me what typically happens when you send that report. Or, do we talk about what happens? Do we talk about things that need to change? Explain what the typical relationship is there, because I'm looking for someone who doesn't copy and paste charts into a PowerPoint deck. I'm looking for someone who tells me and explains, here's what's happening and here's how. Make a recommendation, and from that recommendation, let's follow it and see if it works. Avoid those companies that just live on reports and never build the conversation to help you understand what you need to do to improve.
How legitimate are marketing ideas, like social media, Google, all those different marketing ideas that are thrown around these days?
Number one, So I look at a lot of analytics for a lot of companies, and I'll tell you what, Google is still the number one source of visits to your website. And I would also say it's the number one source of the value. That's how people find companies. It's how people find businesses. It's how people find websites, is Google. And so search engine optimization is always at the top of my list, because it is It's the longest lasting, lowest cost per visitor, lowest cost per customer investment that you can make, and it lasts for years. The second thing is, it depends on the social media channel. For example, for me, I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my number one channel. And so that's what I'm focusing on. Now, here's the thing. I've used other channels for different clients, different customers, and also for myself. And based on the measurements, it's given me a freedom to say, you know what? I'm not going to use that channel anymore. Because based on the time I put into it, based on what I'm seeing from the results, I'm going to put my time and effort somewhere else where I'm getting more for my investment. And so that's where giving yourself the freedom when you see the data, it gives yourself the freedom to focus on one or two channels that are really, really working well and develop them into lead sources. So they're all legitimate just based on what type of business and how you're going about it. But you can't just guess or go on gut feeling. You've got to have some data to back it up.
Do you have any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about?
Well, right now I have an online training site. It is at learn.sitelogic.com. And that is right now I've got a certification program out there where you can be certified in digital marketing through the OMCP. And what that does, and right now what's amazing is what we've seen is people who have certification, they earn between 16 and 20% higher than their non-certified peers. And so that certification, it shows it's a third-party validation that you know how this works. And so in interviews for employers, they love that. So I've got a certification course. I also have analytics courses on there. And then I'll also be adding in the next few months a business builder course that is geared specifically for entrepreneurs or for business owners. And then we're going to have a higher level certification course coming out later in the year. But that's all at learn.sitelogic.com. And the big thing that differentiates my training from other online training is that it's not hundreds of hours of video. In fact, I limit the amount of video. It's activities, it's assignments. You use your own business as the textbook, and I give you assignments, you turn them in, and I give you direct feedback about how you applied the assignment, how you are applying this in your own business. And it's been amazing to see that even during the course, how businesses have changed and transformed and seen results even before they finish the course. And so that's the project. My main project is building out a completely different educational system where people can learn digital marketing.
So is that where people can keep up with everything that you're up to? Learn.sitelogic.com.
That's the learning site, but everything else is on the main site at sitelogic.com. Yep.
Okay. Well, close us out with some final thoughts. So it may be something that I forgot to touch on that you would like to talk about, or just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Well, thank you, Curtis. Absolutely. You know what? I have learned over the years, don't just do what everyone says to do. Get some data and, learn analytics. That could be the number one thing that can transform your business is learning analytics, learning what influences those numbers, because then that gives you it gives you the ammunition you need to make great decisions about your business, to be able to say no to something because I see it's not working, to be able to hold people accountable when it comes to working with an agency or someone else. That data is going to be what you need. And it helps you understand that when you see headlines that talk about, TikTok or whatever, and everyone's there, when you have data to rest on, basically you don't have to follow the headlines. It gives you the literacy to read the headlines and understand that you know what? I don't have to be there. I don't have to run that. I don't have to do what the headline's saying because number one, it's probably inaccurate. It's making wild, wild claims. But when you've got the data, you can rest pretty because you know what's going on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, SiteLogic.com. Make sure you check out Matt Bailey. Make sure you check out his courses, especially if you have a business or podcast, anything that you're trying to do to get those numbers. He definitely has a lot of expertise in it, so be sure to check out his information. Follow, rate, review, share this show to as many people as possible. Tell a friend about the show, and if you have any guest suggestions or topic suggestions, cjackson102 at cox.net is the place to send them. Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Curtis. It's been a pleasure.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.